Peace and good and greetings once again from the Shrine of St. Anthony here in Ellicott City, Maryland. We continue this series of reflections on one of the readings that you'll be hearing on Sunday, this coming Sunday, which is the fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time. And in this series, in many weeks, we've been reflecting upon one of the readings maybe you're not likely to hear too much about, hopefully to supplement, if you will, what you'll hear in your own parish, in your own faith community this weekend. And we'll continue with that today, looking at a reading from St. Paul from his first letter to the Corinthians. Now this is indeed St. Paul's greatest hit. If you asked your average Catholic, or anybody really who had some knowledge of the Bible, to pick out one passage from Paul's writings, this is probably the one they're going to pick. And I'm using the longer form because without the longer form, you lose a little bit. So let's listen to the reading and then take some time reflecting upon it. Brothers and sisters, strive eagerly for the greatest spiritual gifts. But I shall show you a still more excellent way. If I speak in human and angelic tongues, but do not have love, I am a resounding gong or a clashing cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and comprehend all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have all faith so as to move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away everything I own, and if I hand my body over so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It is not jealous. It is not pompous. It is not inflated. It is not rude. It does not seek its own interests. It is not quick-tempered. It does not brood over injury. It does not rejoice over wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. If there are prophecies, they will be brought to nothing. If tongues, they will cease. If knowledge, it will be brought to nothing. For we know partially, and we prophesy partially. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I used to talk as a child, think as a child, reason as a child. When I became a man, I put aside childish things. At present, we see indistinctly as in a mirror, but then face to face. At present, I know partially. Then I shall know fully, as I am fully known. So faith, hope, and love remain, these three. But the greatest of these is love. Well, I'm sure you'll agree with me that if you were going to pick out a passage from St. Paul's writings, that the one most people would reflect upon or know by heart almost in many places, this is the one. And we'll be hearing this Sunday as the second reading. We often hear this reading very often, if not always, it seems, in weddings, as it should be, right? We have this wonderful constitution, if you will, on what love is. Love is patient, love is kind, it's not jealous, it's not pompous, right? This reading shows us, tells us what love is and how we live love. And certainly, therefore, it's an appropriate text to have and to celebrate here at a wedding where we're celebrating the sacrament of love, if you will. But if we reduce this reading to just instructions on how to love people we choose, right? Or we have chosen, we're missing the point. If we reduce this reading to just a warm, fuzzy, hallmark image of love, then we're missing the point. Because indeed, this text is not just about how we should act with the people we choose to love, but how we should live with all people. And indeed, Paul tells us this is a more excellent way. Yes, there are people who have prophetic gifts. There are people who have the spirit of tongues and all these other things, and that's all great. But unless we love, as he says, I am nothing, I gain nothing. Unless I live this great constitution of love, if you will. Why? Because, as he said, love never fails, right? All these other things will pass away. All these other things will fade, right? Our knowledge, our prophecy, these great charismatic, if you will, spiritual gifts, all will pass away. Love is the thing that will remain. And indeed, we are called to embrace this and to take this up as moving beyond the simpler gifts, the more childlike, if you will, gifts. But when I was a child, I used to talk as a child, think as a child, reason as a child. When I became a man, I put aside childish things. Indeed, loving the people we choose to love is relatively easy. Loving everybody is heroic, challenging. We can only do it with God's grace. But how do we do it? How do we get there? What is our model? And he gives us that, answers that question too, in a very curious little phrase. At present, we see indistinctly as in a mirror, but then, in the fullness of time, face to face. What's this image of the mirror? Now, we think of mirrors, we think of the mirrors that we have that reflect perfectly, right? We've just seen NASA launch this wonderful new infrared telescope a million miles away with its perfect gold mirrors, right? That's not the mirror of the ancient world. The ancient world mirrors were made of metal that was polished, but that did not reflect totally accurately, if you will. One had to look deep into the mirror to find the reflection. Hence, a powerful symbol, one that is taken up by a great figure of our Franciscan tradition, Clare of Assisi. Clare of Assisi, in her writings to Agnes of Prague, talks about Christ as a mirror. Christ as a mirror, right? Indeed, in our chapel, and I can see it from where I'm seated right now, we have a beautiful statue of St. Clare, and she's holding up a cross that has a mirror in it, beautiful artistic rendering, right? Because in Christ, we see ourselves, hopefully, right? And in the cross, particularly, we see perfect love, right? And how we are called to love all people, not just the people that we choose, right? Because indeed, Christ crucified was patient, was kind, not jealous, not pompous, all those things that Paul talks about, right? In Christ crucified, we find the perfect mirror of what it means to be a human person, to truly love as Christ loves. And hopefully, as we gaze into that mirror of Christ, in that experience, we come to know more clearly who Christ is and what it means to truly love. One of the devotions people enjoy here in the shrine, and we interrupted some poor soul to do this today, is the Stations of the Cross. In the Stations of the Cross, what are we doing? We're gazing, not just with our eyes, but with our hearts, right, into the event of the Passion, right? seeing it reflected in our lives, forming us, showing us who we are called to be. And indeed, that is true love. So we ask the Lord to help us with that as we reflect upon Christ, as we see the image of Christ in our lives, that we might become that image, that we might also be that mirror of Christ in the world in which we live in. Well, we thank you for joining us once again for today. We thank our companions of St. Anthony who make it possible through their generosity for us to do these videos and such. But also, we send these out to our companions as our gift to you from the spiritual home of the companions of St. Anthony, the Shrine of St. Anthony here in Maryland. Just to do a little commercial too, some of you might have enjoyed and participated in our online series of talks. We had a Franciscan theme in the fall. We'll be doing another series in the spring beginning in February. So those of you who are connected with us through any kind of our social media or our emails, please watch for that in the next week or so, our invitation to you to join us for our next series. So until next time we meet, peace and good and God's blessing from all of us here.